Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. My name is Robert Tidmore. I'm a hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cerise Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded, and a sign-in sheet is on the table on the left side of the room. Please be sure to sign in for our records. Instead of necessary, we can contact you in the future regarding the item you're here for. This public hearing is being held to consider 8 items. All 8 items are about tree removal and replacement and/or tree planting applications. They are as follows. Order number 201016 to consider the removal of 8 street trees with replacement adjacent to 300 Clay Street. Order number 201017 to consider the removal of 2 street trees with replacement adjacent to 1380 Greenwich Street. Order number 201018 to consider the removal of 1 street tree with replacement adjacent to 2939 Vallejo. Order number 201019 to consider the removal of 1 street tree with replacement adjacent to 1077 Broadway. Order number 201020 to consider the removal of 1 street tree with replacement adjacent to 3015 Van Ness. Order number 201021 to consider the removal of 13 street trees with replacement adjacent to 807 Mission. Order number 201024 to consider the removal of 2 street trees with replacement adjacent to 3700 20th Street. And finally, order number 201025 to consider the removal of 1 street tree without replacement adjacent to 127 Buchanan Street. My job this evening as the hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing items, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations on today's hearing. I will not be making any determinations today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and my recommendations to the Director, and the Director will make the final determinations. When the Director's determinations are made, the Department will notify you of them. So if you want to be notified, again, please sign in at the table on your left. The hearing is going to proceed as follows for all of the items. I will first ask the Department's Urban Forestry Unit to make a brief presentation. The Urban Forester will give me a brief summary of the application and will have up to 5 minutes to present the item. On the cases where the Department denied the application, I'll have the applicant speak next, and then any members of the public may speak. Each person will have up to 3 minutes to speak, and then I will allow the Department to speak again to address any concerns. On the cases where the Department approved the application and received protests, I will have the protesters speak after the Department and then the applicant. Then I will allow the Department to speak again to address any concerns. This next part does not apply. Just as a note, comments should be addressed to me and not to the Department. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. And the clerk will monitor the time for all speakers. When you hear the first bell, it will mean you have 30 seconds left to speak. A louder second bell will signal that your time is up. If you are speaking in general about all of the permits, I would ask that you only speak once and not to each specific permit application. After public comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. And in the order of proceeding with time, we're going to start a little bit out of order with order number 201024 to consider the removal of 2 street trees with replacement adjacent to 3700 20th Street.
Hello, my name is Steve Keller, certified arborist and urban forestry inspector with Public Works. The first case we're doing is the removal of 2 trees at 3700 20th Street. As of early last week, the property owner emailed us and withdrew their removal permit, and the Bureau of Urban Forestry is also not pursuing removal of either of the trees at the site. So there's nothing further from the Bureau of Urban Forestry. Now, if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak, they can.
Thank you. So just to be clear, these trees are not being removed, but if anyone would like to make any comment, you're welcome to come forward. Seeing none, we'll close that and move on to the next item. We'll move on to order number 201021 to consider the removal of 13 street trees with replacement adjacent to 807 Mission.
Hello, Steve Keller, Bureau of Urban Forestry. Again, this is for the removal of 13 trees adjacent to 807 Mission Street. The staff originally approved the removal of all the trees, and the public has protested. Giving a little bit of history of ficus trees in the city. In 2014, the Director of Public Works issued Order 183151, which lessened the restrictions for ficus tree removal given the above attributes. Competing codominant stems with acute angles of attachment, failure history, canopy vigor, large limbs damaged by vehicles, root pruning history, canopy balance, large stature, utility conflicts, and live crown ratio. These are many of the attributes that if we see these in a tree's canopy or trunk, we assume that they have a higher failure risk, and therefore the city's been aggressively pursuing the removal of them. At this particular site, 807 Mission Street, there's been a history of significant tree failures. This one occurred in January 2019 during a recent storm. And this was, I believe, the last of three I think the last of 4 large failures over the course of 4 years. And when this tree failed, our office decided to pursue removal of all the trees at the site. Here's another photo of the tree that completely uprooted during a storm and closed all of Mission Street and took down the Muni wires as well. And this was in September 2015 when a very large ficus tree didn't have proper road clearance and a very tall truck drove into it and again closed down several blocks of Mission Street. Just some general overview photos of the site. It's a very narrow sidewalk, and it's the south side of an east-west running street. And that combined with the adjacency to the tall building has caused the canopies over time to grow very tall and then lean out over the road, kind of reaching for light. So you have very tall trees, and then they're kind of imbalanced, and the majority of their weight kind of leans out over the roadside, which attributes to them uprooting and failing. Tree number 1, here's a photo. It's quite tall and has many codominant branches. And then the main union at about 6 feet has some very narrow unions, which would be a point of failure. Tree number 2 is the same. The canopy has been limbed up and has a very poor branch union at about 8 feet. Tree number 3, again, very wide canopy, many competing branches in the upper canopy, and a poor branch union at about 12 feet. And if you were to look at these trees from the side, they would all have the majority of their canopy leaning out over the wires and over the curb. Tree number 4 has a fairly poor trunk taper and some vehicle damage. Tree number 5, has a very poor main branch union, and the weight of the main canopy leans out over the road and a little bit to the east. And again, tree number 6, a very poor branch union, an acute angle or a narrow angle of attachment, and that is often where we see the very large ficus trees fail. Tree number 7, again, the main canopy leans out over the road, and you can see evidence of past damage from buses or large trucks. And a common way ficus trees fail are when large trucks are not paying attention and they drive into the trees, and then the entire tree uproots or falls into the road. Again, tree number 8, overweighted over the curb, many competing branches in the upper canopy. Tree 9, again, the same as the other ones, leans out over the road, very poor trunk union at about 8 feet, and vehicle damage. Tree 9, the smallest tree on the block. I assume they posted this one for removal just because they posted the rest of the trees on the block, and it is a ficus tree as well. Tree 11, very poor live crown ratio, and again, competing branch unions at about 8 feet. Tree 12, several competing branch unions, pretty recent vehicle damage you can see by the fresh wound on the trunk. And tree 13, very large, overhanging the utility wires, and very recent branch failure, or very recent vehicle damage. That is all for the Bureau of Urban Forestry.
Thank you. And Steve, these trees are able to be replaced, is that right?
Yes, correct. The city is intending to replace, I'm not sure if every single site can be replaced, but as many as we can at this site would be replaced. And I know there's several empty basins at this site, so potentially we're able to replace more than 13, but I don't have the exact number.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak about this item?
Overhead, please. As you can see on this, the 4 trees were posted on 1/3/2019 to 2/2019 at 807 Mission. My name is John Nolte, and I'm here to protest these trees. At the last meeting, since it was continued, item number 4, the last meeting of last month, you had the item as only in 1 tree being removed, and you should see in the, this was a picture of what the BURF put onto the overhead, and they said 5. So this is very confusing to the public when you keep on changing what is being heard. Next, on today's agenda, you're removing 13. So we have, to 4th Street, we have 7 trees from the midpoint down. And then to 4th Street, we have 6 trees from the middle of the street to 5th Street to the east. So staff hasn't really said reason for the removal, because the issue is just because 1 tree fell during one of the biggest storms we had during January. I don't suffice that to be a reason to remove trees. And also, since they posted twice or 3 times, I find it very confusing. They have to go back every month to find out what's the new score at it. Now, and then my issue is with this tree right here, which they refer to as number 9. I would suggest, since the trees are possibly going to be removed, that 9 tree be saved, because it's the smallest one. It's not, it's it could be saved. And plus, as the BURF said, there are empty plots from prior trees that were there, and some that have been covered over, so there could be a lot more go in. And also, I would like that, since this is downtown, right across from Bloomingdale's, next to the Metreon, and also next to the Moscone Center, that streetscaping be considered for the street for the trees to be replaced, and work with the Yuba Bueno Benefit District to get that done, because this falls within their district, and they do streetscaping. And then lastly, a lot of money has been invested by the city into the immediate area.
Thank you. Any other comments for this item?
I'd like to submit this letter on behalf of Joshua Clip to protest that no CEQA CEQA review has been performed on these trees. and I have a letter.
Thank you. Great, we'll take a look. Any other public comments? Steve, perhaps you want to maybe come back up and explain a little bit more about the ficus order and just where that came from and what that means?
Yeah, so. Yeah, again, in 2014, after about, a decade of experiencing very high number of annual large ficus failures where they fall down and either half the tree fails and blocks entire roads and crushes cars. Sometimes, in a few instances, they've actually hit people. The director essentially has considered ficus trees to be a public safety hazard and is allowing Public Works and applicants to remove ficus trees at a much higher rate than they would approve other removal permits. And these are the main, I guess, attributes that you would see in a tree or at a site that would lead to us approving ficus trees for removal. But essentially after, like I said, about a decade of very high instances of large tree failures and really bad sidewalk damage and property damage, the director finally decided to lessen the restrictions for ficus to be removed.
And it's your opinion or the inspector's opinion that these trees meet this criteria?
Yeah, looking at the photos, these ones are particularly bad. I think it's hard to conceptualize, but the way, essentially the sun is behind this property on the south side for most of the day. So the trees don't get a lot of direct sunlight, which has caused them to grow more vertically and less horizontally, and also reach out over the road more so than other sites. So the weighting of their canopy ends up over the road more. And in particular, some of them have really, really bad branch unions, and it's only a matter of time before they do fail during a storm or even not during a storm. And this is a very, very busy area. Like it is near the Metreon in Yerba Buena, so there is a lot of foot traffic. And at this time, the city really believes it's best to remove them and plant with a more appropriate species.
Great, thank you.
But I could speak after him.
Yes, so the department speaks and then the protesters speak, and
Yeah.
the department has a chance to respond to any
Okay.
questions.
So what he was saying, first off, that storm in January, he didn't also tell you the bigger picture that during that storm, 300 trees throughout San Francisco failed. So when you pick on one and then show that video of down Burf's website, them just taking apart the tree on their Twitter feed, and also using their PR people to emphasize this, not only hurt the upcoming other ficus trees removal of the 7,000 that are approximately throughout the city. I find this very misleading to the public, and also showing the actual, taking down of the tree and putting it up as a video on your Twitter feed for the Department of Public Works. That I find, again, very disturbing propaganda on behalf of the city. And this is hurting the neighborhoods. I'm a native San Franciscan, and also I deal with Yerba Buena. I helped form the Yerba Buena CBD, which is across from there. I'm also, as a native, also helped with putting in the across the street, which is the Bloomingdale's, and helped deal with putting together the project when it was put in. So I'm very concerned about, again, the city's put a lot of money into that immediate area for shopping and for the Moscone, for the conventions that come to San Francisco. And if you're going to start taking out trees and a whole block of them, according to this 13, that's what's remaining right there, you're taking away the major canopy on that street and also hurting the trees, the birds, and other entities that use those trees for shelter. Thank you very much. And also, I think we should think about today is Earth Day and think about how that impacts what's going on right now.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close this item and move on back to our original schedule. And we'll go to order number 201016 at 300 Clay Street.
Steve Keller, Bureau of Urban Forestry. This case is for the removal of 8 trees with replacement adjacent to 300 Clay Street. Staff has denied the removal and the owner has appealed. Here's a photo from Google Street View of 300 Clay Street. There are 8 Brisbane box trees that the property has applied to remove. The Bureau of Urban Forestry has denied all of them. The reason the property is applying to remove the trees is they're doing an upgrade to the lobby and the front facade of the building. This is a concept drawing from their application that they provided. I believe it's like a new glass siding, and they also mentioned some lobby upgrades. We don't believe that it's appropriate for a property to remove trees just because they want to aesthetically upgrade their building. And we also think the trees have a much higher value than what is proposed. This is actually an assessment of all the trees from the arborist report that the applicants provided. They show that all 8 trees are in good to fair health. 6 of the trees have fair structure and 2 of the trees have poor structure. So again, none of the trees qualify as needing to be removed based on health and or structure. They're all fine trees. And again, this is from the applicant's report. And again, this is another conclusion from the applicant's report saying the Brisbane box trees, with the exception of tree 8, generally have fair health and structure. The proposal for removal is more an aesthetic and design choice than a necessity to accommodate construction. However, the new facade will consist of a glass wall facing the street and living walls within the lobby. Installing the large glass panels for this configuration will require sufficient clearance, and the existing trees will interfere with access. The removal of the Brisbane box will allow more light penetration into the new glassed-in lobby, thereby providing the living walls with natural light they need to survive and thrive. Here I'm just going to go through a photo of each tree. Here are trees 1 and 2. As you can see from the canopies, they're quite healthy. They have good structure, a single trunk for the majority of the canopy, and then typical form for this species of tree at this age. Again, trees 3 and 4 in good health, fair structure. Tree 5 and 6, the same thing, good structure, good health. Tree 7 and 8, tree 7, good structure, good health. Tree 8 is the worst tree of the bunch. It's kind of suppressed by the 2 neighboring trees, so it has never really developed a great canopy. And again, here's a photo of all the trees, and basically in summary, the property owner is requesting to remove a row of healthy and mature trees, their primary goal being the aesthetic upgrade of their facade and improved light penetration into the lobby for a living wall. Again, I don't think this is an adequate reason to remove a healthy row of trees. And also, if a lot of these trees are allowed to be removed, many of them can't technically be replaced given new guidelines on. It's a very busy intersection, so there's a lot of utilities, crosswalks, traffic signals. So if all of the trees were approved for removal, only, I would say, a quarter of them, maybe half, would technically be allowed to be replaced based on the adjacency to crosswalks and traffic signals, so even more reason not to allow removal. That is all. Thanks.
Thank you. Is the applicant here?
Hi, I'm Aaron Wong with Tree Management Experts. We were the arborists hired to prepare the report that Steve just showed. And let's see. So going over the trees, they were initially planted incorrectly, too deeply. Our report showed that, for instance, can you put this up? Tree 1 was planted at least 4 inches too deep. That's also tree 1. The planting cans were left in place when the trees were pointing the ground. When we were digging around in there were pieces of plastic surrounding most of the trees. So we think that they haven't been able to establish proper roots or were root bound for a long time. The trees never really reached the size that they should have. They've been growing slower than they should in that location with southern exposure. The trees were previously topped around 10 and 20 feet up. You can't see it in those photos, but yep. You can kind of see, if not for the glare, that there's multiple stems arising on all of the trees at similar levels, showing that they were poorly pruned. A lot of the interior foliage, and because of the lack of light from the building side, there's not a lot of interior foliage, so they're generally lion-tailed, not extremely. Thanks. They're asymmetrical because they're close to the building and because of previous clearance pruning. And the low branches obstruct the traffic signals on clay when you're driving on clay with both the trunks and branches. The current concrete facade is very close to the trees. So in order to install the new facade, there'd need to be a lot of pruning, which would result in trees that really wouldn't survive well in the space. They'll be really one-sided, and Brisbane box can grow to be very large species. So they're too close to the building. Their trees are too large for the space, really, at maturity. With Bureau of Urban Forestry, we've identified 4 planting spaces on different frontages of the block, which is in my packet, and they're willing to pay an in lieu fee for the other 4. Thank you.
Thank you. So in your original report, you said that the removal was based on primarily accommodating the new design, but it sounds like there are other health factors at play.
It's accommodating the new design, but also accommodating construction of the redesign. There need to be a lot of pruning in order to provide clearance to crane in the large glass panels. And there would just probably be impacts on the trees because things happen and, cranes and things swing around. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, we've got these in order.
And are you the only one representing the applicant, or is there other?
There's someone from the design team here and my colleague Roy Leggett.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Kai Brahms. I worked for Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, the architect for the project on behalf of the owner. And I think I just wanted to point out just a couple of things that are contextual to that site that I think that we've heard from the landlord's management company that manages the property, that they have found that because of the height of the trees and the canopy of the trees, they do conflict with the traffic lights that are at that intersection, and that they are concerned and have been concerned for several years about safety of not only their tenants, but also visitors to 300 Clay coming and going across the Clay Street intersection there. And it's certainly one of the aspects of the removal of the trees that the owner would ask the city to consider. Yes, there are, the idea of removing the trees so that the canopy has a little bit more room at the sidewalk. Because of requirements from the city, we have to maintain a particular depth, particular height to the canopy for historic preservation purposes, which constrains the design to be able to react in different ways. So because of those constraints, we are very limited in how we can accommodate the trees. And we think we've done the best job we can in attempting to do so, but we really believe that the constraints of the height and the width of that sidewalk area, as well as the issues that I pointed out initially about safety of pedestrians and visitors crossing the street, are aspects that we'd ask the city to consider.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Roy Leggett. I work with Aaron. We're both consulting arborists. And I have been to the site, and I just wanted to add a little bit of perspective, or maybe some additional perspective, kind of on the age class of these trees. They look great lined up there, honestly. I mean, I don't really have a problem with the way they appear there. From kind of a lay perspective, they look fine. But those are actually young, mature trees, so they have a mature framework. But I'm familiar with these trees from other locations, like down in LA. And over time, assuming those nursery cans aren't basically bonsaiing them, if they were to develop to be mature trees, they would be immense compared to what you see there. Way, way bigger, totally out of scale, and way too close together. So I think you have a problem here that kind of needs to be addressed one way or another in terms of managing the site. And we really tried to give Steve Keller an honest report about a design-driven change, and that's indeed true. Mm-hmm. But I think there are long-term management concerns and issues that would be realistic to consider that go beyond the design itself and the in the moment that kind of triggered it. The owners don't dislike trees, but they do have an interest in indoor-outdoor connection through a living wall kind of design concept inside the lobby, which right now is really cavernous and kind of like a prison, quite honestly. If you've been inside that lobby, you'll see it is concrete and monolithic and kind of dark. And I can understand how they really need to get away from that. It just doesn't make sense the way it is. So anyway, hope that helps you.
All right, thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to speak about this item?
Hi, my name's Simon Willison. I'd first like to submit this letter on behalf of Joshua Clip. I'd like to note that I also support the denial of this removal application on the basis that these trees are public assets that appear to be being removed for private gain.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Seeing no more comments, we'll close this item and move on to the next. Oh, I'm sorry. Steve, would you like to respond to particularly the comments about the
Yeah, I mean,
root bound and the
yeah,
pots
so
constraining them?
Yeah, I read the report that Roy and Aaron submitted, and I don't find anything to be false in the report. Like, it's very possible that the planting cans were left on originally. That's very possible, and they may have been planted too deep and planted a little bit too closely together. But you still have to take every site as an individual site, and currently these trees all seem to be doing quite well at this site. Based on what aspect they're on, they all get a lot of direct sunlight coming from the south, so they're not competing for light too much. I personally haven't been to the site, but my coworkers have, and they took photos. And the trees seem to be good for the site. They have a nice raised canopy, so there are good sight lines. It's a one-way street coming from the left to the right, and there's plenty of visibility for traffic signals. There's multiple traffic signals. I don't know of any recorded tree-related safety incidents, but I'll just say that the trees are healthy and they seem to fit the site well, and removing them would be a mistake, especially given that it's just for the betterment of the building. And again, if they think they have to drastically prune the trees to a point that is going to negatively affect their health because they want to install the glass siding, then perhaps they should rethink that and not install the glass siding, because we're not going to give them permission to drastically prune the trees just to put in the glass siding.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to the next item. Sorry about that. Moving on to order number 201017, considering the removal of 2 street trees adjacent to 1380 Greenwich Street.
Did you say 1580? I think it's 1380.
Yes, sorry, 1380
1380,
Greenwich.
okay, cool. Steve Keller, Bureau of Urban Forestry. Removal of 1 tree with replacement. The Bureau of Urban Forestry denied the removal of this Victorian box, or Pittosporum undulatum. The property owners or management appealed that. This is a photo of the tree. It's not very old, but the canopy appears to be healthy. It does have a slight lean uphill, but no other discernible defects. Here's a photo of the tree. To the naked eye, the lean does look slightly troublesome, but it's been leaning for a long time, or I believe it's been leaning for a while, and the growth at the top of the tree kind of starts to correct. So the tree is stable, and then the new growth is kind of starting to self-correct towards the sun. We felt that the tree was healthy enough to remain. Other than that, there's not much else to it. Decent structure other than the lean, healthy canopy. Here's another close-up of the lean. And then there's a second tree at the site that the property owners want to remove. We're going to approve this tree for removal. I think this issue came up after the other one was denied, so we will be willing to approve this one. But again, the leaning one is denied. And this is a young planting that we are going to approve for removal. It's hard to tell, but the upper portion of the canopy is dead, and the lower stuff is starting to resprout, and it's just best to remove this one. Let them remove this one now and replace it.
And what type of tree is the second one?
The second one's also a Pittosporum undulatum, so the same as the other species at the site. That's all.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Seeing no one from the applicant side, any members of the, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna.
Any members of the public wish to address this item? Also seeing none, we'll close this item and move on to the next. Order number 201018.
Before we move on to the next one, I just wanted to reiterate that 3700 20th Street, the property owners removed their request to remove the trees, because I know some people showed up late.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
I wanted them to know. So just so everyone's aware, 3700 20th Street, the property owners are no longer pursuing the removal of the plum tree and the olive tree. Sorry. So if you're here for this case, neither tree is being pursued for removal anymore. I just wanted to make sure no one's waiting around for that. Thanks.
Thanks for that clarification.
Okay. Steve Keller, Bureau of Urban Forestry. Next case is the removal of 2939 Vallejo Street. The staff has denied the removal and the owner has appealed. Here's a photo of the cherry tree at 2939 Vallejo. It's a Kwanzan cherry, Prunus serialata. This picture is from this winter, so the tree doesn't have any leaves, but it is very healthy and appropriate size for how old it is. Really not any reason to remove this tree. Another photo of the tree. The sidewalk appears to be in good condition. The tree has typical structure of this species. It has a little bit of damage from over the road, but that can be mitigated with pruning. Additionally, a letter we received today from the owner of 2961 Vallejo. It's hard to tell from this photo, but it appears the tree is planted near the property line. On the left, 2939 Vallejo, the owners have applied to remove the tree. On the right is 2961 Vallejo. And a letter we received from 2961 Vallejo today said the owner of 2961 Vallejo planted the tree 20 years ago and with an agreement from the previous owner of 2939 Vallejo, and that the owner of 2961 Vallejo has been maintaining the tree at their cost for several years and will continue to do so if this tree remains. So again, the tree is in very good condition. The adjacent owner likes the tree and has been maintaining it, so they have a vested interest in it. Again, that it's healthy and has a good structure, so the city denied it.
What's the reason for removal or stated reason from the applicant?
That I do not know the exact reason why the applicants applied to remove it. I think their appeals stated they wanted a new species that was more in line with the aesthetic and design of the street. I think they wanted to plant a new Magnolia grandiflora, maybe I believe the St. Mary's variety, just because they thought it would fit better in for
Okay,
match the street better, I guess.
thank you. Is the applicant here?
Thank you. Can I show the... So I just wanted to confirm, I'm from Australia, so I don't know all the laws around here, but confirming that we actually just recently got a survey done to confirm what was our property and what wasn't our property, and we found out, or confirmed rather, that this was on our property as far as the survey lines are concerned. One of the reasons, or the main reason that we're looking at, and the question was that based on that, I'm assuming that it's our legal obligation to trim and make sure that we take care of that tree, and that other people aren't allowed to do it except with our permission. Is that correct? Is that the law? So someone's allowed to come on our property and touch it?
Starting 2017, the city of San Francisco maintains all sidewalk trees, so you have no legal obligation to maintain the tree. And we do allow adjoining property owners to maintain the trees on the sidewalk.
So we are able to prune it ourselves, though?
You can, yes.
Okay.
Well, no, not you. You can hire an arborist.
Right, cool. And so somebody who isn't an arborist, a neighbour of ours can go and ask an arborist to go and prune it for them?
They could ask us permission.
Okay. And do you have to get it from us? You can just do it?
Correct.
Okay. And we can appeal that if you...
I mean,
Yeah. So as you can sort of see, it's aligned with our property line. And the main issue that we have in relation to this is when you have a look at the actual height of this tree and some of the canopy, it's actually quite low. And when you're parking your car there, you actually can often be getting out and bumping your head. Or as you mentioned before, there's actually indications where cars have actually bumped in there. And that's one of the main issues. Because the thing is that I guess this is a unique situation where we're actually wanting to put in a bigger tree. We're not actually wanting to put in a smaller tree, we're actually wanting to put in a bigger tree that's actually, as you can see here, has a much higher canopy to avoid bumping in your head and also your car running into it, and also as it, same thing coming down the sidewalk. The trees that we're looking at putting in are actually aligned and in symmetry with the trees that we have out the front of our house. That's a hard one to sort of see, but it's a magnolia tree, which, as you can see, is much higher, and and you're not going to have any issues of when your car's parking there or if someone's walking along the sidewalk. So that's the main reasons that we're wanting to change and move it and remove it so that we can replace it with a larger magnolia tree to avoid bumping our heads and having to sue the city.
Thank you. Any members of the public wish to speak about this item? You can ignore that.
I've had a dental procedure recently, so forgive me, I have trouble pronouncing, so live with me.
Will do. All right.
My name is Matt Brooks. I'm the owner of 2961 Vallejo Street, the adjacent property. Does this thing work here?
1 second.
There we are. There's the tree last week. As you can see, I stood in front of it so you can see the height. And as for the history of the tree, yes, about 18, 20 years ago, it was planted in conjunction with the neighborhood. We all met. We planted a series of cherry trees. If you go down the street, you'll see half a dozen or more cherry trees that are very similar. They're all planted at the same time. Height is not a problem, but certainly if it was, the tree could be trimmed. For your information, the tree height, there's our neighbor's Jeep. Doesn't seem to have a problem parking underneath the tree. We met with our neighbors, and I hesitate to speculate upon their motivation, but I was told that, because I asked the question, why do you want to remove a tree when to the west the trees match? And the only answer I was given is this is part of a process where they're trying to eventually get a permit to do significant work on their house, and they want to access that area between our two houses, and part of the access is to remove the trees so they can get construction equipment in. And I don't think that's a valid reason. To the immediate east of their house is a vacant lot that can access their backyard if they need to get equipment down there. So I really don't see any reason to remove a lovely tree that frankly tourists come by and take pictures of because it's a nice looking tree. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak?
My name is Pam Rourke-Levy. I'm actually Matt's wife. We live at 2961 Vallejo. We are really lucky to live in a beautiful block that dead ends into the Presidio where the Lion Street steps are. And the Lion Street steps are planted top to bottom with flowering cherries. And when Matt moved into the neighborhood, many of the neighbors got together and planted flowering trees out in front of their houses. Matt actually planted 2 flowering cherries, so they're actually a matched pair, both of them mature, both of them very much the same, which appear to be in front of our house, regardless of where the property line may be. What I find really, really disappointing is to hear my neighbors come here and allege that the reason that they're taking that tree out is to put in a larger tree. They actually came to our house this week at our invitation to explain to us why they had not even talked to us before actually going through this whole process. And the only way that we found out was we saw the appeal notice on the tree when we came home. They sat in our living room and they told us that the reason they wanted the tree out was that they needed to get equipment between the two houses, and you can see from the picture that my husband showed, it's a very narrow gap. And in order to, their contractor told them that the reason they needed to get rid of the tree because the contractor couldn't get the equipment up between the houses. And as my husband said, there's a completely empty lot on the other side of the house that they could easily use, but they have alienated the owner of that lot. And therefore, that owner is asking them for money to be able to use their lot. So at that point, they decided they needed to get rid of our tree. And that's a tree that we've taken care of for 20 years. That, as my husband stated, people come and they have their wedding photos taken out in front of the house because of the beautiful flowering trees. It's a public asset, and I don't think it should be taken out.
Thank you. Steve, could you speak and address the concerns about the tree being too low, and maybe could it be addressed with pruning?
Yeah, so the city's basic guidelines are 8 feet of sidewalk clearance and 14 feet of curb clearance. And in a residential neighborhood like this, the 14 feet of curbside clearance is a little, you can kind of play with that a little bit because you're not having big UPS trucks drive through. You know, based on the photo I see on the right, the sidewalk clearance appears to be fine. You know, when it leafs out, maybe you'd have to prune it a little bit just above the sidewalk. And, you know, the gentleman showed the Jeep parked underneath the tree, and that seemed to be fine. You know, they've been maintaining it for a while. If there are any branches that have, you know, damage from vehicles, the lower ones could be removed. I don't think obtaining the proper clearances is going to be an issue with this particular tree.
Thank you. All right, thank you all for your comments. We'll move on to order number 201019, to consider the removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 1077 Broadway.
Hello, Steve Keller, Bureau of Urban Forestry. Here's a photo of the Blackwood acacia at 1077 Broadway Terrace, or no, that's where never mind, 1077 Broadway. This particular species was very commonly planted about 60 to 40 years ago, and now they're all getting to a mature age. It's a species that San Francisco is very familiar with, as they tend to mature and their roots become compromised from sidewalk repairs or vehicle damage. The roots tend to rot pretty aggressively, and the trees are known to suffer catastrophic failures from root rot. This particular site has perpendicular parking, so when the tree was young, and maybe before these protection measures were put in, that the tree was probably damaged by cars several times, and there's a damage and a rotting wound at the base. And based on the characteristics of this species, that once we have signs that the roots, or there could be base rot, typically we consider this tree to have a very high likelihood of failing. This is just a photo of the upper canopy. Health-wise, the tree looks good when you look at the canopy, but underground we just have suspicions that it could be dangerous. And here I just have a few examples of what I'm talking about. Seemingly healthy trees based on the canopy failing because the roots were compromised from previous sidewalk repairs. And showing some root rot. Again, healthy canopy, but the trees uproot because of underground issues. That is all. Thank you. So just to reiterate, based on the injury at the base of the tree, we're afraid that there's some amount of rot underground, and it's only a matter of time before the tree would fall over in a storm. And we do think this tree can be replaced based on the underground utilities.
Thank you. Any members of the public wish to speak about this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. To order number 201020, to consider the removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 3015 Van Ness.
Steve Keller, Bureau of Urban Forestry. This is the same species as the previous record, Blackwood acacia. Again, as the trees mature and age out, they tend to have a high likelihood of complete failure, either uproot or failing at the base. Again, just to reiterate from the previous case as well, mature Blackwood acacias are prone to complete and catastrophic failure once the roots have been compromised. Some photos of some previous failures throughout the city. In addition to us thinking the tree is getting too old and possibly at the point of failure, I have some pictures from November 2013 and a more recent picture from December 2018. And it looks like the tree has developed a slightly more discernible lean out towards the road, which is a pretty big concern for this species of tree. It's not a huge difference, but it's enough to be concerned. It was probably the primary reason this tree was targeted for removal. Additionally, there's a very minor dieback in the canopy, another sign that the tree possibly isn't bringing up enough nutrients from below due to root rot. Also, coincidentally, 2 days after we posted this tree for removal, we got reports of a neighbor doing a sewer repair, I believe was a residential sewer repair directly adjacent to the tree. So that was concerning because they trenched near the tree and did they cut some roots. We didn't find any large roots cut, but maybe 8, like 1 inch to 2 inch roots, but still concerning. Additionally, there was a sidewalk repair in 2012, 2013, and some amount of root pruning occurred then. I don't think a lot, but some did. And again, the main concerns are past root damage and a new or a discernible lean that is increased in the past. Just before we came to the hearing today, the property owner stated that they wouldn't be able to make the hearing. And if that's the case, then we'll ask for them to put something in writing that the hearing officer can then review. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak about this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the final item, order number 201025, to consider the removal of one street tree without replacement adjacent to 127 Buchanan Street. And I see a large number of people in the audience. Are you all here for this particular item? Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Apologies. I would have done that one first had I known. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
The last case.
Yeah, this is the last item.
What are you guys waiting for? Yeah. Yeah, that is not a case that's going today. 3202 16th Street.
It's not on our agenda.
Yeah, I think, okay. Yeah, the 27th maybe? 29th. I can, no, that'd be 16th Street. There is a special hearing, I think, for just 16th Street, but it's going to be in May. Was it the
Sorry for the confusion. Is there anyone here for any other potentially misscheduled or confused scheduling issues? Everyone in here is for 127 Buchanan? Or general comment? Okay, great, thank you. 807 Mission, we had that, already, but we can let you speak at the end if you'd like. Or you can make a general comment. Yes, please. So now we'll go with order number 201025 regarding 127 Buchanan Street.
All right, 1 second. Okay, Steve Keller, Bureau of Urban Forestry. At 127 Buchanan Street, the Bureau of Urban Forestry approved one cherry tree for removal without replacement. It's a construction site where they are building a new building. I believe it's a 25-foot lot. This is a photo of the existing tree. It's a Kwanzan cherry. The structure is it's fairly typical of a cherry tree, but there seems to be maybe a wound at the main branch union and several competing branches. Also maybe some rot on a main branch as well. The main reason the tree was approved for removal is because the gas service was built exactly where the tree is proposed, or the existing tree is where the new gas line needs to be installed. And PG&E is refusing to reroute the gas line around the tree. PG&E claims for new construction and new services, they will only put a gas line in a straight line. And they also want a 5-foot clearance from the center of a tree basin. So this is kind of an idea of, this is an old Google Street View photo of the property. The tree on the left is currently existing and kind of an idea of where the new gas line has to be trenched. And PG&E claims they won't make a zigzag or go through the driveway. They say it has to be a straight line for new service, which is something we often come up against. Additionally, the tree in red was already approved for removal at the beginning of the project several years ago, so that tree is gone. So essentially, the project will be removing 2 trees without replacement. And again, the reason the tree on the left, the only tree that's currently existing, was approved due to the trenching for the new gas line. There is a possibility that a replacement tree could be planted on the adjacent property. It's an idea of really the only place to get a new tree that's somewhat close to this new building.
Is that what you're showing in blue?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Okay.
sorry. That's what I'm showing in blue. This is an older Google Street View photo. So the vacant lot is where the new house is being built, and then the place on the left is an entirely different property, but potentially we could have this construction project put a tree there.
Do you know why the tree in red was approved for
I
removal?
think that's the driveway.
Driveway, okay.
Yeah. And again, we constantly are battling with PG&E about how to trench their utilities. On older properties, the gas lines often take left turns and zigzags, but they say due to public safety, they want the gas lines to make straight lines. So during future demolition or future projects, it's easier to find.
Thank you. Is anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item? Please.
Hello, my name is Scott Madden. I'm a long-term resident of San Francisco, and I have lived in the neighborhood where this tree is located for 7 years. I walk through the neighborhood several times a week, and I walk past this particular site with my dog. and am concerned about the proposed removal of the tree. The reason for the removal makes sense to me. It does seem to be solving a problem that PG&E has created by its inflexibility. I'm concerned that removal without replacement will be a setback for the city's goal of expanding the urban forest within San Francisco. The Board of Supervisors adopted the urban forestry plan in 2015, and it calls for new plantings of 50,000 trees by 2035. That specific plan made a finding, however, that basically stated that new plantings were not keeping pace with tree removals, and that this particular case seems to be an example of that, where because of this construction project, we'd be losing 2 street trees without replacement, and ideally, we would be planting 3 new trees to continue expanding the urban canopy in our city. San Francisco lags behind other major cities. Our canopy, at least in 2015, was about 14%. In Chicago, it was 17%. LA is 21%, and New York with 24%. The plan for 50,000 new street trees is ambitious, but I believe it's achievable, and if these trees are removed, this tree is removed without replacement, we're not making any progress towards our goals. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the possibility of that the staff person mentioned about possible new planting just to the left of where the proposed removed tree is located. That was not anything in the public notice, so I wasn't aware of that, but thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Thank you.
Here's a picture of the tree during the construction, and you can see that we have a protection around it. And here's another picture of it. Shows that it is clearance, at least for also PG&E for electrical. So, I mean, I can't help PG&E for gas. I can't put everything in simple. But I see that this issue is that, everything it's been harmed by the construction. And when I was watching it, while they were working on the property. And also, he made a point of having a replacement tree nearby, but also across the street, which is in this picture, you do have across the street, you do have empty wells on that side. And so I don't see why the replacement trees, 3 can be put across the street on Buchanan there on that property. So there is places that, like anything, and I don't think that would be conflicting with utilities on that side. So, because there are empty wells on that side. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please come forward.
I'm one of the property owners. I've been here since 1973 when I moved to San Francisco. I've planted 50, 75 trees in the neighborhood with the urban forest, and I fought with PG&E since last June to try and work out any other way to try and save this tree. I also asked them if I could plant anywhere else the urban forest, and I'm not allowed to plant on anybody else's property. So about the only thing that I can do is create some kind of greenery there, but it can't be trees because PG&E will not allow us to do anything else. We tried to get them to do an offset. We tried to get them to relocate the gas. We tried to everything that we could, and at this point, I'm 3 weeks away from finishing the building. The empty lot is now 5 units, and I don't have gas. I actually don't even have electricity because they held up everything until we can resolve this. So we do have, I have 5 units of brand-new housing, which the city needs. I can't fight PG&E anymore. I've talked to the people who originally protested and explained the situation to them, and they are not here tonight, nor is the gentleman, I don't think, who told me he actually planted the tree, unless that wasn't you, right? Okay. I also spoke to the person who actually planted the tree. We may have been out at the same urban forest to do this. At any rate, if there was any other way that we could put the gas in, we would. I appreciate that the department has agreed to allow us to take it out. I wish I had another choice.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Steve, I guess there were 2 things that came up. One was how a replacement tree is categorized, and I believe, sir, you're asking for if we could plant trees across the street, and generally speaking, that's not considered a replacement tree because it's not in the same general location. And is that right, Steve?
Yeah, that is true. But ever since the Public Works took over maintenance in 2017, and now that we maintain all the trees, we've become more flexible on allowing property owners to replace trees kind of on the same block or near it. We don't allow it all the time, but if we know that the property owner has a vested interest and will be there for a while, we can allow it. I was going to ask the property owner, are you going to be retaining the property for a while? No. And it becomes difficult if someone were to sell a property, then it's difficult then to guarantee that the newly planted trees on the same street will be maintained. Because that becomes more difficult. So the owner will be paying, if the tree is approved for removal, the owner will be paying in lieu fees, which will go into a tree planting fund. But then the issue is if we allow them to plant a tree on a different property, how are we going to guarantee that that tree is then watered for 3 years is the main problem. Yeah.
So those 3 empty pits across the street will eventually be replaced by buff at some point?
Yeah, by buff or by a nearby resident or property owner that takes the initiative to contact Friends of the Urban Forest and plant those basins.
Okay.
Yeah. If we could get to some written and legal agreement that the subsequent property owner would be willing to water the new trees, but then there's no guarantee that happens.
Right.
That would be difficult.
Okay, so we'd run into the same issue if we went to that site in blue there, is that right? If the owner would plant, if the construction project would plant it, and then we can get a guarantee from a new tenant or a new nearby resident that they could guarantee 3 years of watering, then it's a possibility. We just have to find the right person who is willing to water it. Okay. Thank you. All right, that reaches the end of our items. Oh, I'm sorry. There was a woman in the back who wished to speak about 807 Mission Street. You can go ahead and come forward, please. And then I'll take public comments on general items after this.
Sorry, I'm late.
Well, that's okay. We went out of order, so I was trying to, that was a big item, so I figured there'd be more people here to address it. So we're just trying to get people to leave as soon as they wanted to.
Oh, okay. How many people spoke in favor of preserving it?
There was 1 speaker and 1 letter.
Oh, okay. Well, I wrote 8 reasons why the 12 or 13 trees must not be removed. I'm a resident of San Francisco. I go there pretty often because I shop in the Sony, that Metreon area. I sometimes eat there, and I go to Target there, and sometimes I go to the movies there. But most of all, I go to Yerba Buena Gardens, for the arts. So on my way there, I see the 13 beautiful trees. And the reason why I think they should be preserved is because they are beautiful. They have good structure. And the trees are mature and very much alive. And the trees are healthy looking, at least. They have really big canopies and lush leaves. The trees provide habitat for the animals and birds and insects. The trees provide shade for people, for the pedestrians that walk in that area, and the diners that eat, like at Mel's Diner and that Vietnamese restaurant. I think it's called the Green Papaya. The trees offset the effects of global warming by taking in the carbon dioxide and generating oxygen for us to breathe. And it's interesting that today is Earth Day, so that's why we're reminded how important it is to, have a livable city. The trees add to the property value of the area. The trees are a public asset, not just for the local residents, but for tourists, because they're across the street from that shopping center, the Westfield Shopping Center. Lots of people go there, and they look at the trees. And I'm glad somebody spoke about the city's goal of having 50,000 new trees, and so I don't want to lose 13 trees in the process. And according to the letter I read, they said, yes, there will be replacement trees, but, according to the letter, it's based on utility concerns. It says most trees can be replaced depending on the space and utility conflicts. But I would rather have the trees than the utilities. Well, I'm partial because I just love trees. And since the trees can't speak for themselves, I'm here to speak for their behalf. And Arbor Day is coming up. Arbor Day, I believe, is this Friday. Am I correct?
I think it already happened.
Yeah, it's somewhere, sometime this week. Oh, I'm V Huyn. I'll give you my letter. So please don't let them cut down the trees. I know one tree has fallen, but just because one tree has fallen doesn't mean you have to kill the other, trees. And I believe in putting a structure around each tree to keep them from falling over, something really strong, like a fence, to keep the other trees from falling over.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak about any of the items? Yes, please come forward if you'd like.
Is this for a general comment for all of the items? Is that the right time?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Hello, my name is Natalie Down, and I'd like to request serious consideration for the timing of the removal of the trees and any pruning of the trees covered in today's hearing. Bird breeding season is between mid-February to mid-August. Bat nesting season is between May and September. So an ideal time to remove the trees or to do any pruning would be after the bats have fledged in October or November, before the hibernation season starts. Birds are the species of primary concern, and we have evidence of raptors in San Francisco, which are protected, as well as migratory birds also protected from interference. Certain species of birds, such as hawks, herons, egrets, crows, and ravens, often reuse their nest each year. We additionally have tree-nesting bats in San Francisco, including foliage-nesting bats, for example, hoary bats and western red bats. Any tree with cavities open the possibility for further species to be impacted. Bats are also known to return back to the same tree and give birth each year. In California, the western red bat is listed as vulnerable in the California Endangered Species Act, and is proposed as a mammal of special concern and a candidate for listing as an endangered species under the California Endangered Species Act. I would also like to draw attention to the fact that the procedure for removing these trees without inspection and consideration for the environmental impact is shaky at best. The city is only allowed to bypass CEQA review and environmental report in small cases of immediate public safety, intended for emergencies with individual trees. Having declared all nearly 7,000 to 9,000 ficus trees in the city as dangerous is stretching this justification at best. Dividing the major project of removing ficus trees in the city into piecemeal trunks is deceptive, and it needs to be reconsidered to be the major project that it is and go through a proper CEQA environmental review. I would like to request the following based on my research. For tree removals to take place or pruning in October or November, for reasonable CEQA environmental inspections to be reinstigated, and for the ficus trees matching the city's removal criteria because of this declaration of emergency, for the environmental inspection and report to actually be completed. For the inspection of the tree at the exact time of the proposed removal, and then if bird nests or bats are found, to post signs and wait for any work until the young have fledged. Fruiting or flowering tree shrubs, especially blackberry and cherry, should be allowed to complete their fruiting cycle before they are disturbed. And I'm particularly concerned about the tree on 2961 Vallejo in particular with this. This helps the considerable number of fall migratory birds, including raptors, that come through the incredibly ecologically important Pacific Flyway route that San Francisco, as the largest estuary on the west coast, is right in the middle of. Over 120 bird species live here year-round, and 350 species live or pass through the city, through the Bay Area each year. It's worth noting that these birds are protected by the Migratory Species Act. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan. I've lived in the city for 19 years, and I wanted to speak about DPW's mandate to the Bureau of Urban Forestry to basically get rid of all the ficus trees, which my understanding is there are about 7,000. We've asked DPW and Buff many times to give us some data about tree failure, and they are never able to produce that. And it seems that they're not giving sufficient consideration to the substantial loss of tree canopy that this is going to cause. I live in Hayes Valley, which has some of the worst air quality in the city, and they've proposed to remove almost all of the ficus trees in our neighborhood, which will completely denude several blocks. Those trees provide important protection for our air quality, and they also provide important bird habitats. When I wake up in the morning, all I hear are birds. I'd like it to stay that way. And it's hard to accept their statements that these ficus trees are so incredibly dangerous. I've lived in my current house for 17 years. I've seen one ficus tree failure, and no one was injured. So this sort of sky is falling attitude on the part of DPW feels like a dramatic overreaction. I just can't believe that they are all so dangerous. If DPW is so concerned about safety in our city, there's a lot of other things they could do first before cutting down all the trees. Repair all the sidewalks, deal with some of the areas that need traffic lights, put in speed bumps. There's just a lot of other things they could be doing for public safety besides removing all of our trees. And when they talk about replacement, I have a tree that I planted in front of my house that's 5 years old, and it's like a tenth the size of the ficus trees that they're talking about removing. So they call it replacement, but it's not replacing what they're taking away in terms of the tree canopy. The trees that they're planting are not going to replace the trees that they're removing until long after I'll be dead. So it's really a misnomer. Another thing that they could be doing is filling up the empty tree wells before they start removing trees. So that's what I would like to see them do. A, provide us some data so we really understand what the danger is, because either they're wrong, or if they're right, then it'll reassure the public this is something that needs to happen. B, plant the empty tree wells before cutting any trees, and C, phase in the ficus tree removal over like a 10-year period. Do it very, very gradually so that it doesn't feel like such an assault on our urban tree canopy that is such an important part of protecting air quality through its oxygen emission and CO2 absorption. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And if I could ask you, you asked Buff to produce data. And I'm just curious what data you were looking for. And we might be able to,
Data about the number of ficus tree failures there have been in the city in the last decade, and how many of them resulted in serious injury. I mean, like, did they fall on cars or did they fall on people? I think, some of us are willing to tolerate a little bit of damage to automobiles in order to preserve our tree canopy. That's modern living. There are lots of things in the city that are dangerous and we don't eliminate them. Cars kill a lot more people than trees, but we're not getting rid of all the cars. So that's the data I'm talking about. Thank
great,
you.
thank you. And did you sign in on the list on the side? Okay, great, thank you.
I want to piggyback on the ficus trees. Since it was brought up about Hayes Valley was going to be meeting next week here, but also we have tree removals at the main library, tree removals of ficus trees on 16th Street, tree removals of 77 on 24th Street. And so as it keeps on adding on, we're talking in the hundreds of trees just on ficus, when there's 7,000, and we're losing those per Burf's decision to go after the ficus trees. But I took a picture today right outside their headquarters, and they got a ficus tree. So, and here they've already, what's the word I want to use? Already trimmed supposedly that area, so that tree's going to stay. That sort of shows a sort of a mixed message when you say you're going to get rid of ficus trees, but you're going to keep one in front of your headquarters. They're on mission. So I think, again, the data needs to be revealed, and also today, right now, they're having a meeting on 24th Street about the 77 trees, as we're having this meeting here on the 77 removals. So, again, this is by neighborhood, taking out of trees, especially the ficus, and today we had 13 of them in front of you. And I explained to you when we talked about 807 Mission how first it was 4 trees, then it got up somehow to 13. Again, everybody has to go back multiple times, and this is what exactly they're doing with Hayes Valley next week. It started out with 29, then it went up to 39. And matter of fact, today, in 5 days, the date on those removal trees will be finalized. So I'm a little concerned about also the postings that they're doing. Giving back to back within 30 days, double postings on the same trees or in the same area. If they were already inspected by inspectors at the time when they were originally posted, why do you have to go back and do another set or more? And it gets to the point of how can you trust what they're saying? Because this is what they're doing to the trees, especially ficus trees, of doing multiple postings on them and getting the neighborhoods upset about all these trees being removed all at once and losing the canopy around their businesses and residents. Thank you.
thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak that has not yet spoken? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing, and this hearing is now closed. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your time, and I'll be making my recommendations to the director within 10 days.